Brian Fritz here for BetweenTheRopes.com. Joining me today, Chris Jericho, who's good enough to find some time to share with me. So thanks for the time, man. How's everything going?
It's going good, man. Going good. Just been working on a bunch of stuff and enjoying the summer being home after doing the Fozzy tour of England and Europe that we did in July. So it's all as well.
Do you actually have downtime?
Yeah, actually, probably for the first time in a long time, I've had about a month of downtime, which has been amazing. It's been such a blessing and just a great time just to relax and hang out with my kids during their summer vacation too. So it's been really nice not having to worry about getting on planes or the scheduling. I've had a couple of days here and there of going to LA or wherever, but most of the time it's just been kind of laid back, which has been very cool after 20 years of not really having that too much.
Is it hard for your mind to stop racing? Because when you're involved in so many creative things like you have been, and your mind's probably running, so quickly all the time, is it tough for that to kind of turn off?
Yeah, it is. You have to force yourself to do it, and that's why it's great to be at home with my kids. They don't really give you a lot of time to not, pay attention to them when they demand it. But yeah, I do have a lot of ideas and a lot of things still going on. And I find if you work on those things when they need the attention, then you can just balance it by just kind of relaxing and letting it go for a while when it's done. And that's the way I've always been for all these years, because I have done so many projects basically since I started wrestling when I was 19 years old. So that's why I'm able to balance it, is you have to turn it off when it's time to turn it off.
Are you one of those guys that carries around like a notepad with you, or has a little notebook so you can jot stuff down whenever you think of it and just kind of file it away?
Yeah, I used to, but now I have an iPhone, which I discovered about a year ago has that little notepad app on it that you can use. So I have probably 50 or 60 entries in that, just anything, song ideas or song titles or ideas for whatever it may be, or just trying to get some things in order. But yeah, I definitely do carry that with me. And also too, there's a voice, like a little voice recorder thing that you can use. I speak into that if I have different ideas about different things, and just kind of keep them and look back at them maybe a month or two later and go, that was a great idea, or that idea sucked, I don't know what I was thinking there, and just kind of move along that way.
I found that the memo thing is especially handy when you go to the theme park to jot down where you parked so you don't forget.
Yeah, I just park in the same place every time. So that, because there's been times when I lost my car and couldn't find it and had to get the guy to drive me around, and so now I always park in floor number 4, row number 6 every time. Every time. That's the best way to do it.
I saw that you put on Twitter the other day that you were pretty excited about the rumors of Ozzy and Sabbath getting back together.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge Ozzy fan, I'm a huge Sabbath fan, so I haven't seen them in a while. And we were just talking, actually, while we were on tour, how cool it would be to see Sabbath play one more time. And yeah, I get excited about stuff like that. I'm still a fanboy at heart.
And there's nothing wrong with that. So, speaking of being a fanboy, it was when was it? Like just less than 2 weeks ago. It was the 12-year anniversary of when you debuted with WWE, coming out on Raw and having that interaction with the Rock, and declaring Raw as Jericho and everything that went into that. Does it feel like it's been 12 years?
It doesn't, and that's kind of funny. That's the beauty of Twitter, is that you find out all this stuff of people, posting, anniversaries and pictures and all that sort of thing. Because I would never know. When you've been doing this for such a long time, you don't remember every little single thing like that, even though that was pretty monumental. And once it was pointed out, I was like, oh yeah, it was around this time. But I don't really keep track of stuff like that, But it doesn't really seem like it was 12 years unless I think really hard about all the stuff that's taken place since then. But I can remember writing that promo that I did like it was yesterday in the apartment I was in on the floor, just kind of writing down ideas and writing up the whole promo, because back in that time there was no writers or creative, as they call it. It was basically you were just on your own. You might have a couple ideas thrown around, but most of it was just coming from your own brain and just saying it the way that you'd want to say it. There was no rehearsals or anything like that, and you would just go out there and do it. So that's the biggest change between the WWE in 2011 and the WWE of 1999.
What was more nerve-wracking for you when you debuted on WWE and trying to make sure that came off as good as possible, or being on Dancing with the Stars?
Probably Dancing with the Stars, I have to say, because even though it was my first time in the WWE and I knew that I really had to hit a home run, I had been hitting home runs for years in wrestling, whether it was in small-town Canada or in the big leagues in Mexico, the big leagues in Japan. And, WCW was no small fry at that point in time either, and I'd made my mark there. So it was very scary and challenging, and it was very, oh my gosh, I hope I can do this. But deep down inside, I knew that I could. With Dancing with the Stars, I'd never danced ever in my life, not once. And the first time I ever did something like that was in front of 25 million people. It's basically an unknown. It was like I really had to do a good job or a decent job to not be completely blown out of the water. And had that not done very good, had the first one not gone very well, even if I would have made it through the first week or whatever, your confidence would be shot. If you don't have confidence, you can't succeed in anything. So when I did that first dance and then had the judges not completely torch me and got, a decent score, I was really like, all right, I think I can do this. And then I just really started getting into it after that.
Go back to that debut on WWE. Do you remember what exactly did that moment mean for you and for all your fans as well? Because I think for the longest time, people had been wondering, like, would you ever make it over to WWF at that time? And people had seen you in WCW and were just waiting for you to kind of make the jump and see what you could do with that promotion.
Well, I mean, I'm never really worried about what the fans think, because at that point in time, I didn't really, I knew I had fans, but it wasn't like it is now, where there was millions of people kind of, sitting on the edge of their seat wondering what I was going to do. I kind of just disappeared from WCW because I had an argument with Bischoff, and I was gone for like 4 months. That's when I started Fozzy even. I mean, it's been 12 years I've been with the band, as crazy as that sounds. But, I just kind of disappeared, and I had made the deal to come into the WWE around that time, and that was it for me. And I didn't want to stay in WCW. I didn't care about it. I just wanted to go to the WWE because that's what I wanted to do my whole life, was to work there and work for Vince. And I just was really excited about it, and it was kind of like a whole new world. And I went in there by myself. I didn't have any friends there at the time, not one. And it was really strange to go in there kind of as a real loner and have this huge build-up where, I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was, but I knew that there'd be a little bit of a target on my back just because of where I came from and the style that I had, and then the build-up that I had too, and even my guaranteed contract at the time was pretty big in comparison to what some of the other guys were getting, and I was basically an untapped commodity to anybody there. So it was really nerve-wracking, and I knew that I would have to hit a home run on my very first chance, because there might not be another chance. I was smart enough to know that at that point. So there was a lot of pressure for me in my head. But the thing was, it was weird. It was like in Chicago that night, it was almost as if they had received, personal invitations from Vince that Jericho was going to be in the crowd, because it seemed like everybody knew that it was me. There were signs there, and there was chants, and then actually, I just watched it the other day because they had this DVD that just came out, The Greatest Performers of the 21st Century, and I saw a clip from it, and the reaction when that Jericho came on that giant Tron was huge. And it was pretty cool for me, because then it was like, okay, they know that I'm here. At least they know who I am. Even if the people in the back might not know who I am, they're going to hear the fans cheering and at least go, okay, well, we made the right choice at least in bringing this guy in.
How perfect was it from a standpoint of you were in Chicago, and that's such a fantastic wrestling audience there, and the people that react? Could you imagine what it would have been like if, say, you debuted in Des Moines, Iowa or something?
Yeah, I can't imagine, because even then I didn't know that Chicago was as good as they were. To me, it was just another city. I mean, we wrestled there quite a bit with WCW, but not much. It was more of a WWE stronghold. And we used to wrestle at the United Center downtown, which, even though it's the same city, it's a different arena. It was a different vibe. It was not the same. So, I mean, the Allstate Arena now out by the airport in Rosemont, it's crazy how those fans are always the best. So it wasn't like I was like, oh, well, thank goodness I'm in Chicago. Oh, my gosh, I'm so excited, because I didn't know. You know what I mean? It could have been Des Moines, Iowa, and I wouldn't have known the difference. And I sure felt that when I came back the second time in 2007 in Miami, and the reaction was good, but it wasn't the same. And I was wishing, man, I wish I was back in Chicago again.
Well, those fans are nuts up there. I mean, we could see that even just, with most shows, but even just recently with the whole, CM Punk storyline with John Cena playing out when they had their pay-per-view match at the Money in the Bank just a couple of months ago. And, I mean, that was a fantastic match, but what made it even bigger was just that crowd response. And I don't think they would have gotten it. Now, that was a special circumstance because that's Punk's hometown, but I think it just goes to show how much fans can still play into, an entire match and the atmosphere and everything that goes into it, that, you still get good reactions.
There's no doubt about it. It's also pretty funny. I always laugh, and this always seems to happen to everybody but me. There's always such a great kismet, happenstance, if you will, and that there's always big matches in the hometowns of the people involved. It's like there's been, pay-per-views in Boston where Cena wins the title, or pay-per-views in Chicago where Punk's in the main event vying for the title, or, WrestleMania next year in Miami, the home of The Rock. It's just like there was never once ever, Jericho fights the big one in Winnipeg. So I was always a little bit jealous about the guys who always seemed to have very good luck when it came to where they were having these big matches and where they were from. So yeah, I mean, it was perfect. It was perfect timing, and I'm sure when Punk signed his deal, 3 years ago or whatever, he didn't know that the day that it was going to be up was going to be in Chicago. Mm-hmm. It was just one of those crazy things, and it definitely adds to the vibe of a match. And that's one of the most important things. It's the same with music. I mean, if you have a great crowd that's giving you a lot of energy, it makes the match that much more classic, or makes the gig that much more memorable. It might not even be the best match you ever had, but the reactions for it make up for it and also push you to do even better. So, I thought that Chicago match was a perfect example of what wrestling can be in the right environment with the right atmosphere.
Did you ever talk with WWE, say, hey, you know what, we got a big show coming up in Winnipeg here, in a month. Is there any way we can build to something where I can have a big match?
Well, we never really went to Winnipeg too much, I mean, it's funny, the only time we did go there that I can recall for TV, actually Benoit was champion at the time, and I thought, well, this would be perfect to have, Jericho versus Benoit in a world title match, even though we were both baby faces, but who cares? I mean, we could have had a great match, and the crowd would have been nuts. They decided against that, and I ended up being in a musical chairs contest. So that was what I had.
Was that the one with Flair where he was found around Stacy Keibler too?
Yeah. It's funny, when I wrote Undisputed, I went back and watched it, and it was hilarious, because when Brian Gewirtz first told me about it, I was pissed, because I was like, this is not cool. Why am I not getting a world title match? And musical chairs sucks. And then we actually did it, and it was one of those things like a Chris Rock routine. You read it on paper, and it's not funny. It's all in the delivery. And, Coach was great, and Jerry Spears missing his face, and Flair was running around, and Stacy sat on the King's lap, and he pulled the chair away, and it was just all this ridiculous stuff. It was like probably the best musical chairs contest that you could ever have within the realms of pro wrestling. But at the time, it wasn't really a good trade-off for the world title match that I thought would have been much better.
Maybe. I remember asking Rick about that one time, and he said he loved every second of it because he was behind Stacy.
He was the star of the show, man. It was great.
Yeah, the other thing too is, when you went over to WWE, when you debuted there, that was right in the middle of the Attitude Era, and there were so many different things that were kind of crazy, wild storylines sometimes. How did you never really get caught up in any of that?
The first night I was there, I went backstage in Detroit for Sunday Night Heat the day before Raw in Chicago, watching it, and that was when Big Boss Man gave Sean Stasiak a Viagra, which caused him to have a huge boner through the whole match. and the finish was Big Boss Man hit him in the boner with his nightstick, hit him in the nightstick with his nightstick, and that was the finish. And I was like, what am I getting myself into? And I told Vince, you know, I remember when he actually called me at my house before I even signed to you know, tell me he wanted me to come work for him, and I was like, this is really cool, but the only thing is I'm just really not into this whole, you know, Mark Henry was sleeping with old ladies, and there was a bunch of crazy stuff, and he's like, no, I would never get you to do anything like that. Of course, he was just, you know, saying whatever he said, but for whatever reason, I mean, I didn't really have to do anything that crazy, but then you look at the first angle I had, and that was against China. So, I mean, you know, man versus woman, even though I wasn't sleeping with an old lady, I'm still, you know, working against like a girl. So it was kind of a strange land, so to speak, right off the bat, because that was the vibe back then. You know, that's how it was, the whole attitude or whatever it was. But, you know, it's the same as when they went PG-13. A lot of people are like, well, is that why you left? Because the PG-13? And, you know, I don't care about PG-13 or Attitude Era. If you're a great performer, you can make it work no matter what it is. And I never really cared because I might have gone, you know, 5% into the Attitude Era or 5% into the overly PG era, but I pretty much just did my thing and made it work with whatever was given to me by the boss of the company. So it doesn't matter. That's a cop-out if people say, well, I don't like it because it's PG-13 or I can't work within the PG-13 system. And that's BS. I mean, it doesn't matter. If you're a good guitar player, you can play Van Halen or, you know, you can play George Benson jazz. That's an excuse. There might be certain things that you're better at, but you do whatever your boss tells you and make the best of it. And that's what being a performer is.
And I think that's the one thing people get lost too when they talk about, well, they don't have any blood anymore. And I'm like, well, you know, there's a reason why you've had that in the past, but it's not necessary, especially all the time, and you can get away from it for a while.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess people like the barbaric aspect of blood, but it wasn't really anything that you would really have to rely on. You know what I mean? It would add to it, but when it's taken away, now that it's been gone for a while, who really misses it? You know. So once again, it's kind of a cop out when you had people kind of complaining about all these different things for really no reason. You know, it's like hard chair shots to the head or any of these different things. You don't really need it, you know?
Yeah. Well, as a guy that's been in the business now for 2 decades, I mean, obviously when you get into wrestling, you know, you have a certain perspective on it and you have all your goals laid out that you hope to accomplish. And now that you've accomplished so much and you've been in the business for so long, what's the biggest thing when it comes to your view on the business from years ago to where it is now?
Well, I mean, this is the entertainment business, you know. So whatever is going to, you know, provide the most entertainment and also make the most money is what's going to kind of be the law of the land. And I understand the PG-13, and I actually kind of dig it because I think wrestling always was for kids. And kids have grown up now. Obviously, you know, my 7-year-old son plays Call of Duty or, you know, kills zombies every day and runs around shooting things, and there's maybe some of the innocence of being a kid has been lost, but still, wrestling, you know, when it got kind of out of control, I wasn't as much of a fan of it. I didn't like, you know, DX telling the chicks to pull up their tops and stuff like that. It just wasn't something that, you know, I didn't really think, this isn't a Motley Crue concert, you know, it's still supposed to be something that families can go to. You know, it'd be like a hockey team has a goon on their roster that's beating people up. You can still take your kids to it. It's not like he's beating people up and then telling the chicks in the front row to pull up their jerseys and show their boobs. So, you know, I kind of was a little bit like, I don't know. So, and all that part and parcel that went with it when they went PG-13, that's why there was no more swearing. There was no more blood. There was no more, you know, lascivious acts from the divas, you know, panty matches and all that stuff. And to be honest with you, I'm old school, man. I thought that stuff was a waste of time anyways. I hated it. You know, I love hot chicks as much as anybody, probably more than anybody, but I don't want to see them in wrestling rolling around on a gravy match on Thanksgiving. You know, it's not my thing. So I think that the way it is now actually is good, and I don't think it's really that much different from what it was before. It's just easy to jump on the PG-13. It just gives you a moniker to jump on. You know, it gives you something to hate. If they never said anything, if they never made any big deal about it, nobody would probably even really notice. You know, they might say, "Oh yeah, they used to do a lot more blood," or I guarantee they wouldn't notice the chair shot stuff because it's so minor that you don't even really miss it. And when they hit people, it's the same way as it was before, except for the idiots that would just let themselves get hit in the head, and I was one of them. So believe me, I'm not cutting anybody down, but so I just think it's the way of the land right now to get more sponsors, and I think it's working. So what's the hassle?
You know, what's funny is along those same lines when you talk about how, you know, it's changed. It's now PG-13. People wondering like, oh, do you have to do all these kind of stunts or do you have to do certain kind of storylines to really book business? But at the same time, so many people are talking about the CM Punk storyline, and it's basically just something that's very basic. I think it's something it's a little bit different than what we've seen as of late, but it's something that's still, in essence, very basic. But if you do it right, I think it shows that people can be attracted to it as long as you do something that's entertaining and something that has a story that people get hooked to.
That's what it's always been about, man. Always been about that. You know, and the best guys can do that no matter what, you know, rules or guidelines are given to them. So, I mean, that's why the Punk thing worked so good when it did, because it was something different. It was, you know, Punk versus the status quo of the WWE. It wasn't so much the insider topics, and I'm sure, you know, guys like you and me thought that was funny, but your average person doesn't have a clue about stuff like that. They just know that Punk is doing something he's not supposed to be doing and saying something that he's never said before. You know, that's also why I don't think that the thing with Nash really worked all that well this week, because they went too inside.
Yep.
Nobody knows, you know, vanilla midget. No one knows that Nash called him. I'm still not even sure what a vanilla midget even means. So what is the guy in the crowd going to know what that means, or that Nash changed the business to Scott Hall by getting a guaranteed contract? I mean, that's not going to get you heat for anybody. You know what I mean? So there's a fine line about doing something like that and doing something different, but you still have to relate it back to the fans. You have to do something they understand.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, because I mean, I understand there's certain places where you can talk about quote unquote insider stuff, like when you mentioned Triple H being the boss and being married to Stephanie and things like that. But then there's that other line where you just mentioned like the vanilla midgets and getting the guaranteed contracts that so many people, they just don't get it. And then I think you start losing people. And then I also wonder, like, is that really good for the direction that you're trying to go? Even like, you know, when they got Nash and he was out there, and I understand, I mean, this is stuff that he's always done in the past, but, you know, when he's trying to do an ad-lib cut down and he's talking about, oh, you know what, you're basically a pipsqueak and you need to go in the gym and work on your muscles, I'm like, is that really where we need to be going here?
No, exactly. You know, but that's, you know, I think we kind of got off topic of what we were talking about, but I agree. I mean, I agree 100%. And I think, like I said, my biggest point is just always have to relate it back to the fans and keep it within their realm and do it in a way that they can understand it and they can buy into it and they can believe it. If you can get that going, then you'll always have people involved in your storylines.
And that I thought was one of the genius between the storyline of yourself and Shawn Michaels than the last run, is that you guys did stuff that made it feel extremely real, brought out the emotion of it. There was a few kind of quote unquote insider things, but nothing that I really think lost anybody. And the emotion was there and everybody went along for the ride. And I mean, you've talked about this before, about how that was basically just supposed to be very, very short term, and it ended up being what, 9 months long?
Yeah, and it'd be 9 months long for the world title, you know, and made us both, you know, two of the biggest names in the business at the time. But yeah, I don't even know if we even really went all that inside with Shawn. The only inside there was that he was married with kids.
Right.
You know, that was about it. I mean, we never got into anything about his history or my history in the business or, you know, whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's just good storytelling, and that's what. And at the same time, we were doing that on SmackDown. Edge and Taker were having a story that went almost the same length of time, and you know, wrestling is just good storytelling. And you know, I think the people that know how to do that, it's, you know, you can't wait for Brian and Vince and you know, Triple H to come up with every storyline and every idea. You have to kind of come up with your own stuff too, and have the confidence to just do it. Don't worry about it if you get in trouble. And I mean, obviously with Shawn and I, we had a lot of influence on that angle because people are going to listen to what we have to say. Same was the one I did with Ray with his mask. I mean, I had to go and convince Vince about that because he didn't think anybody really cared about Ray's mask. And then after a conversation of explaining it, then he totally got it. But you know, a lot of other guys might kind of back down from that type of not even conversation, but that type of meeting to suggest different things. So, you have to have influence on the stories that you're doing because you're the only one who really knows how to play it off if you know your character well enough.
I think the one thing that people have also found out in this CM Punk storyline, and some you've known for a long time, that I think people are finally turning the corner on, John Cena can't actually wrestle once he gets in the ring.
I have no doubt. I've said that since 2005. End of story. I think it was fun for people to jump on that bandwagon. But when's the last time John had a bad match anywhere? He does a lot of the same things, but who doesn't?
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's how people connect to your matches. So anybody that says that is just being stupid or really doesn't understand what they're talking about, which is, I find a lot of people in the internet wrestling community are like that.
You know what?
People that complained when Christian lost the title after having it for a week and then went on to feud with Orton for 4 months straight. It's like, you people are like, well, see, he lost again. Was that part of the storyline? Well, 4 months storyline, I think, is not bad, for this day and age. So, yes, that is the storyline. That's time for Orton to go work with the next guy. That's what top babyfaces do. They work with heels for a while and they move on. That's the business. That
was amazing, the whole thing with Christian and getting the title and then losing it, like in the taping, because the outcry of social media was just ridiculous. I mean, that just goes to the power right now of Twitter and Facebook and everything that's out there. And I mean, you have so many people that follow you, and same with so many other guys at WWE, and just to see the outpouring of emotion of people talking about that, going, and Christian, like, guys, calm it down. Let's see how this plays out a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Just got to calm down sometimes, but. I think people like having the instant gratification nowadays that the internet can afford them and knowing the inside secret scoop. So when somebody throws them for a loop, it kind of makes them angry.
Yeah. Cena did say something pretty interesting the other day on Twitter, because so many people have been like talking about this and even hitting him up on Twitter talking about, when you just go ahead and turn heel already. And he wrote basically, I'm not a heel or a face, I'm me. I think that it's comical people that believe in archaic ideology that still exists. What's your thoughts about that these days? I mean, are there truly quote unquote heels and faces, or, what's your thoughts about that term?
Of course there is. There has to be. Mm-hmm. It's a modern day morality play. There's always a good guy, there's always a bad guy, and at the end, good beats evil. Sometimes there's a gray line, but, even in the days of Steve Austin, I would never call Steve Austin a babyface when he was at his peak, but he was the good guy. He was the guy you're supposed to cheer for.
Yeah.
And if you ever watch any type of movie or anything like that, there's always a good guy and a bad guy. That's part of what we do, telling stories. So, I appreciate what John was trying to say, but, John will never, or maybe I shouldn't say never, but John shouldn't turn heel because he gets a reaction. And if he turned heel, all those people that were reacting against him would start cheering for him, and all the people that were now cheering for him would be booing for him, and you'd have the exact same thing, except for it would be the kids that are booing and the guys like us that are cheering, the other way around. So, I mean, he's in a unique position. He gets reactions on both sides, and that's all that really matters. But he's the good guy. No matter what he says or how he portrays himself, he's the good guy. And because you get a couple thousand, adult males booing him, doesn't make him bad, doesn't make him evil. He still sells more merchandise than anybody. He's still the face of the company. He's still the best Make-A-Wish guy in the history of the business. There's no reason to turn him heel. That would be being a mark for the fans. It'd be like putting a guy in a rest hold and the fans are chanting boring, so you get up and do a high spot right away. It's like, screw them. I'm in charge of the match. I'll do what I want, and they'll get into it because I'm good enough to make them believe it. Same with John. He's not going to turn heel just because a bunch of people tell him to. Screw them.
And that's the one thing I always find too, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this plenty of times as well, is that it's like the vocal minority believe, hey, we think we know what's best and we think this would be a good idea. But just because we think that way doesn't mean necessarily that probably is best for business. That's not the direction that they need to go. We can think that because it could be different or something that we think that's cool. But bottom line is, we're still the vocal minority. We're fans. We're always going to be fans, but there's a bigger audience that they have to play to as well.
Of course, exactly. And there's always the overlying thing of what's best for business. And that's one of the internet has some great pros and have some cons. And the cons are that, the people's opinions, suddenly you think that everyone thinks that way, and that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of people, I love going to movies, but I don't ever go online and post about them. Doesn't mean I love movies any less, or I'm any less interested in going to the movies. Or if the new Metallica comes out, I'm not going to go online and post about it. And I think a lot of people that go post, suddenly you can't think, well, that's what people are thinking because they don't like it, because the majority of people who post are just there to bitch about stuff. But there's millions of people that don't post that still enjoy everything. You know what I mean? So I think just because there's some people saying John Cena should turn heel, why would Vince care what they think? You know what I mean? Especially if the numbers are telling otherwise. And I'm sure there'll be a time when it's right for John to turn heel. But the thing is, if he turns heel now, who would replace him? Punk? Punk's not at the same level as Cena is.
Right.
And back in the good old days, you had Rock and Austin, two huge baby faces coexisting at the same time. Why can't we have that now? Let's get Punk as big as we can get Cena, and all the people who hate Cena, they'll cheer for Punk, and the rest of the kids and everybody like that cheers for Cena, and everybody's happy. And you got two strong guys you can build your company around, or that brand around.
How much do you watch? It sounds like, you keep up on everything, obviously, but I mean, do you watch Raw and SmackDown and all the pay-per-views?
No, I don't watch them, regularly, but I pay attention to what's going on. I read the updates, and I watch Raw as much as I can, and I'll check out the occasional pay-per-view when I get a chance. When I left the business in 2005, I was burned out. I wasn't happy with it. I wasn't happy with my position. I wasn't happy with the work I'd been doing or the slotting that I had. And this time is different. My contract was up. I had other things going on, and I still love the business, and I haven't missed a week as far as following what's been going on. I'm not sick of it in any way, shape, or form. So I've always been a fan, and I always will be. So it's fun to watch it sometimes and check it out, not knowing what's going to happen.
So what's next on your plate right now? When exactly? I know you announced you're going to be doing another book. When do you start writing that?
I don't know. How it works is you get the deal right as quick as you can while the iron is hot, and then kind of sit on it for a while. That's what happens on Disputed. I had the deal before Lion's Tail was even released, but it takes a while to build up enough gumption, I guess, to want to write it, because it takes a long time and a lot of effort. And I wrote every word in both books, so it's not something I can just hand over to somebody. But I definitely been keeping track of ideas that I want to write about, and I have so much stuff already just from things that have happened the last 3 years now, and 4 years. So I'll probably get started about that. It won't be anytime soon, maybe another year.
Well, I think you almost have to feel the pressure of the deadline coming up on you to really kind of stoke the flames.
You do, and plus I have a lot of great stuff, but I don't want to start getting into this habit where I write a book every couple of years just because I have a deal. I'd almost like to, I think one of the appeals of my books is that people enjoy not necessarily what I'm writing about, but my writing style. So I'd like to kind of morph it into more of like a Chelsea Lately type thing where she writes books every year, but it's not always about, it might just be about one topic or something along those lines, and just make it a very entertaining read all the way through. And I think I've built up enough goodwill in my first two books that people know, that's why I could write about, okay, here's Jericho in a radio station and Axl Rose shows up. It doesn't really sound like the most entertaining story, but it's interesting, and by the time I finish writing it, people go, wow, that was a good story. And that's what I want to do, concentrate more on that. And I have so many things like that already, but there's no reason to rush it, There's no reason to bring this book out within the next year or two, that's for sure.
There are so many different outlets out there for entertainment, and I know that you've been involved in some different things and always looking for other projects. Has anybody ever approached you about hosting a talk show?
Not necessarily. I got a lot of hosting gig opportunities, and I'm actually probably going to do one pretty soon here. But I would love to host a show. It's actually been always one of my goals to host a talk show, and I've had some different ideas and different elements about that. But it's all in good time. Everything leads to something else. All the stuff I did with the WWE, led to this, led to that, led to, me doing Downfall, which led to me doing Dance with the Stars, which led to me doing this new project that will be coming out, or I shouldn't say be coming out, that I'm working on. So it all, like I said, to me it's never been about just wrestling. It's been about entertaining and creative, creative things, and that's kind of what I based the last 20 years of my career on.
How much did between doing Dancing with the Stars and and Downfall? How much did they get people past the perception of, okay, he's just a WWE wrestler, and guess what? This guy can do so much more.
Well, there's a certain prejudice about our business more than any other, in that if you're a wrestling guy, you can't do anything else. And I've had to deal with that with Fozzy for years and years and years. And this summer, we finally, more than ever, broke through. Touring with Anthrax and playing with Metallica and Slipknot and bands like that, and getting great reviews and getting over with the fans and the magazines and the press over in Europe. We've now become a viable rock and roll band over there, which we always were, but in the eyes of the people that, quote unquote matter. And we have thousands and thousands of fans who always felt that we were, a great band. And now that's starting to get over, you can feel the buzz of something building. And one of the reasons why that never worked before is because I was the wrestling guy. And now people don't care. Bruce Dickinson is a pilot with Iron Maiden. It doesn't mean that he's going on stage singing about small bags of peanuts and sitting, by the lavatory in seat 3B. He flies planes and he sings with Iron Maiden. Two different things. Who cares? And it's kind of the same with me. And also, too, with Downfall, I had to really break through, but that kind of helped me get to a different level. And with Dancing with the Stars as well, I don't think they expected me to be as good as I was. I think it kind of threw the producers for a loop until they didn't know what they wanted to do with me, sort of thing, in their booking. And that's cool. I mean, I kind of broke down a lot of stereotypes, both for wrestling and for heavy metal, by doing Dancing with the Stars. And I've always seen myself a certain way, and I think a lot of the people are starting to get that. I'm just an entertainer. There's a lot of different things that I do, and I think people are starting to really figure that out, that this guy isn't just one thing or another thing or another thing. I'm a combination of many things, and then that's just being somebody that does the best he can to entertain in whatever it is that I feel that I can do.
It's funny because I don't keep that much memorabilia, but I was going through some boxes the other day, and I found a Fozzy bandana signed by yourself and the entire band when it was Moongoose McQueen. Everybody had the name for when you guys did the concert in Orlando, the return from Japan on the mockumentary.
Yeah, that was the first show we ever played.
Yeah.
First or second show we ever played.
I got a drumstick from that because you guys threw one out in the crowd, and I don't know how. I was out there, and I caught it somehow.
Yeah, like I said, that's hard to believe. It's been 12 years since we started, and we've been, there's basically two different versions of the band, but, like I said, to be doing this and still have the band growing and getting bigger than we ever had before, 12 years into our inception, that's a pretty cool thing.
I remember those days when you were up at the rock station wearing your leopard skin pants.
Yeah, well, that's when we filmed the documentary. It was, like I said, we started the band basically as a cover band. We were signed by the guy who signed Metallica, Johnny Zazula, and he liked us as a cover band. So like any self-respecting musicians, we took the money and did it. And then after a couple of years of doing that, we really wanted to start playing our own music. And once we started doing that, that's when things really started taking off for us.
You guys are working on another album?
Yeah, I've written all the lyrics for it already, and now Rich Ward is starting to write the music, and then we'll probably record this fall and have it out hopefully in May of next year.
Sounds like it's going to be a busy fall between that. You guys got another tour coming up here in November over in the UK, right?
Yeah, UK and Europe. We're starting to really break into, Germany and Denmark and places like that as well, Netherlands. So, it's been pretty cool to see that. So, yeah, we'll be back over there in November again.
Last thing, now that you've been on Dancing with the Stars, does your wife expect you to dance more often?
Yeah, a lot of people say that, but the funny thing is, it's like just doing that show, I know 7 dances with my partner Cheryl Burke, and that's it. You don't really, it's not like I can just go out there and bust out all these moves and do all these cool things that I did, because that was with 7 hours of training, 7 days a week for 10 weeks. So you really got into the groove. So you couldn't just take somebody that doesn't know anything about dancing and do all these intricate holds. You couldn't, it's really, it's such an art form, and I really got addicted to it and really loved it. And like I said, I think it surprised a lot of people as to how I was able to adapt to it. But it wasn't, it was different, but there was a lot of similarities between wrestling and even music. Being a musician, I could really feel the music, hear the beat, hear the syncopations. Wrestling, you have to be light on your feet, which I think a lot of people didn't expect. You have to be light when you're wrestling. That's the basic crux of everything you do, and I think that really surprised a lot of people. And I guarantee I won't be the last wrestler that does that show.
Who do you think would do well on that show?
Probably guys that are built more like me. tall people, tall guys, and really big muscled guys would have a problem because there's such an art form to it as far as keeping everything straight and keeping everything in a perfect line, the lines of dancing, they call it. So a guy like Big Show would probably have some problems because he's such a big guy, but Miz could probably do good, or Shawn Michaels, or Morrison, or guys like that.
Miz does a hell of a commercial for Subway. Did you see?
Yeah, yeah, it was cool. I'd rather see him do something else, considering he was, the world champ at WrestleMania. Now he's feuding with Jared, but I guess you gotta take what you're given, do the best you can.
You know who's certain about that. You got to pick your moments, do the best with what you're given, and hopefully that when the moment comes, that you'll shine through.
That's exactly right, man. That's the only thing you can do, and just like I say, whether it's good or bad, you got to take it, make it your own, do the best you can.
Well, I always appreciate the time. Enjoy the downtime right now, and look forward to the concert tour coming up here in the fall, and the new album, and all the other projects you're working on. Thanks again, man. I always appreciate it.
All right, Brian. Appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon.